Today is the day that I am going to tell you my Steph Curry story. Steph is the amazing basketball player for the Golden State Warriors. And this did not happen directly to me. It happened kind of indirectly over the phone. And you'll listen to this, and I'm going to give you two stories. There's a Steph Curry story, and then there's a Robin story from 1986. I'm going to compare and contrast the two situations. Obviously, there will be a difference between the two of us. Now, what happened was like our family as a whole, we are big NBA basketball fans. And we live right smack dab in between San Francisco and LA. So when you live here, you can go either way, really. You can be an LA Lakers fan or a Warriors fan. We are Lakers fans. And my son, who plays basketball, he always wanted to go to an NBA game. And my husband surprised him with tickets to the Warriors-Lakers game. And it was up in Oakland. And they had really great seats. So my son is freaking out, right? And he wants to get there early. They were one of the absolute first people into the arena. And the reason for that is because the teams come in way earlier and they practice before the game starts. So you can kind of see what their ritual is and what they do. And so my husband called me because he was like, I am fascinated with what Steph Curry is doing right now. And so he's describing it to me and he showed me some pictures and stuff. But what Steph does, and Steph, if you don't know, is like, I don't know the stats, but he's pretty much the number one 3-point shooter in the world ever, probably in history. I don't know, but he's the best at 3-point shots. He can hit anything. So he was saying that they were shooting as a team and it was just kind of chaotic. There was nothing really formal to it, but Steph had a ball. And what he would do is he would randomly like just start hopping. He would start hopping around and then turn and shoot from a weird angle. And then he would hop on one foot. And then he would start skipping. And then he would act as if he was falling over and shoot from the angle of falling over. So you can kind of see where this is going. But basically, the way he practices is to be able to shoot the three-pointer in any situation. No matter how fast he's going, how slow, if he got hit or pushed, he can still shoot it, he can still make it. So he practices his skill from all different perspectives in all different situations. And he is the best at it. Now, let me take you back in time to 1986, I believe it was. I played on my high school basketball team in Georgia. And one summer, the team went up to the University of Georgia for a high school basketball camp. And these were high school girls from around the state. It was enormous. And they split us up into these other new teams. And our coaches were, I don't know where they were. I don't even remember seeing our coaches, but we actually ended up on teams that were different from our own home team so we could learn new skills. And their whole goal was basically to just wear us out so much that we had to figure out how to play basketball when we were also so exhausted that we were throwing up, which was pretty much what happened because it was in the summer in Athens, Georgia, and it was so hot. And the gym that they had us in did not have air conditioning. I've never sweated so much. And then they tell us to go outside and get some water, and the water was warm. It was the worst week it was the hardest thing I've done besides like natural childbirth, and climbing a 14er in Colorado, and then basketball camp in Athens, Georgia. So we had all these new coaches, and their thing was they would tire us down, which I get. That makes sense. And I talk about that in my writing program of like, you want to build stamina so that they can still do it even when they're tired or don't want to. However, this basketball camp, they would like teach us how to do these plays. And they were very specific and they were really like intricate and complicated. And so you had to memorize, okay, if I'm at this position, I do this. Step here, go up to here, go up 4 feet, step out to the right. She'll go behind you, pass back with your right hand. Oh, and although you also need to do this from any position. So what happened is that I completely shut down. I could not remember anything. So even though I had some basketball skills, we would start doing these scrimmages and they would call out a play number. And I'm like, what number is that? Wait, what position am I in? And so I'm like, I'm stunned and frozen trying to figure out, but from memory, like, what do I do? When it was actually just quite simple. It was just like run up a little bit, catch the ball, turn a shoe. But the whole, like, you need to do it this way. And this is the, all the steps that you're going to take, exactly what you're going to do. Sometimes it can cause you to freeze. And so let's pull this out into a metaphor for writing. And by the way, if anyone knows Steph Curry, please thank him for sponsoring this metaphor. If I were to teach writing in either A, the Steph Curry method, or B, the Robin 1986 humid gym in Athens, Georgia method, I would choose A. Because what you want to give your students is the skill of autonomy and the ability to think for themselves. So you want to create all these different situations, like before you tell them all the parts of an essay, they need to experience the parts of an essay. That's why I use a deconstruct method where they put the strips of paper back together and they come up with, well, what should we do with these strips of paper? What should this essay look like? Let's talk about it, and give them the ability to think through some things. What can be problematic sometimes is if we are overly, like, too heavy-handed with our frames that we're providing them to do. So if we have too many acronyms going on, it's the same thing as me freezing in that gym. Not cold freezing, the other freezing. And not being able to move because there were too many lines and things in my head running around. I couldn't remember what to do. So I keep the acronyms down to a bare minimum in my writing program, just the absolute base things that they would need to remember so that they don't get stuck. And the reason for that is, one year I was doing the RACE strategy, which is restate, answer, cite, and explain. But then we were also doing the CER strategy, claim, evidence, reasoning. And RACE I was using like for literature. If I had a question about theme or characterization, we're going to use the RACE strategy. And CER was typically for articles and things like that. Now, my sixth graders can't seem to remember that. And so when it came time to start doing some writing, and I said, use one of your tools that I've given you. And they were like, which one? I don't remember the letters. And they were so stuck. They couldn't start writing because they were so busy trying to remember the letters in the acronym that I give. I'm like, just write, like, you know what to do. But it was actually hurting them rather than helping them. So the only two acronyms that I use in my writing program are HIT, H-I-T, which is for the HIT introduction. I do use that, and they have told me that that helps them a lot because it calms down their system when I say the word essay, like we're going to write an essay, and they're like, okay, I just have to do my HIT introduction. And they love actually saying that. I'm going to do my HIT introduction, which is hook, introduce a topic, and then T for thesis, or that could be your topic sentence, depending on what you're doing. Narrative essays, that's a different thing. We'll do a different podcast on that one. The other one is CER. So now I have moved, I don't use RACE anymore. It's just too many letters, and the R and the A were too confusing because I was like, actually, you need to condense those down into one, even though they're two letters and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, what? So claim, evidence, reasoning for any other answer to any question is what we do. And then a claim essentially can be an answer to a question. So if I say, what is the theme of blah, 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 they state their answer as a claim. That's what they are saying is true based on what they've read, their evidence, and here's why. And so we use that in history and in science. You could also use CER in math. So I would keep it to a very, very simple construction of like, here's your frame to help you. And then the rest of it, I want you to trust yourself. Now, the way that they learn to trust themselves is to build up those skills and metaphorically be Steph Curry's and do writing in every direction, in every situation, so that they know whatever comes their way, they can tackle it. And I did have recently a fourth grade teacher told me that after the state test, one of her kids came back to her and said that the writing part was easy. And he said it was because of the daily quick writes they do in class. Quick writes, that's what helped. Those are the fun things. They're like dessert that they do for their warm-ups every day. This is a really cool image. It could be moody. It could be, sometimes they're writing dialogue, or they might be writing it like a newspaper reporter, or a diary entry. They're doing all sorts of writing and just tackling it while a 5-minute timer is on. And what that does is if they practice it over and over and they know they can tackle something quickly, their confidence then soars when they get to the state test. And it says, because there are short constructed responses on the state test. It's not all essays, and they just say, write a paragraph that tells us about blah, blah, blah. They're like, okay, I do that every day. And so it's a great feeling to know that those quick writes and those warm-ups that you do every morning are tying into the whole bigger picture of their full writing program. And what I've kind of learned from doing this and talking to now hundreds of teachers is that oftentimes we start off at the beginning of the year and everything seems to be good. We're trying to do engaging things and kind of take it easy as we go in there. But then usually it's about November is when I've noticed this. In November, it's like the wheels have fallen off. The kids aren't actually writing up to the level that you want them, and then the acronyms are confusing them. The templates are kind of holding them up. They don't want to do it. They're not applying the mini lessons to their own writing, and then the writing still it like feels robotic. And what you end up with is a lot of students coming to you often throughout the whole process saying, what do I do next? What do I do next? And they're looking to you, the coach, to tell them what to do. It would be like if I were playing in a basketball game and I got the ball and I didn't know what to do with this play. And I just stopped and I turned and looked at my coach and said, what do I do? I would get laughed out of the gym. I need to pull on my skills and think intuitively and figure out where to go from here. And that's how that experiential activity, when they are putting together an essay beforehand, you can, when you're done with it, you keep that essay up on the wall so that they can see that student example from last year and they can look through the process and go, oh, okay, now I'm moving into this next body paragraph. That's what that looked like. Okay. And then you go from there. So problem can come in if your writing curriculum is front loading too much direct grammar instruction right off the bat, or if it's just straight into genre writing, if it's straight into, okay, welcome to school, we're going to get into essay writing, we're going to start with a narrative, and they have to build those skills up, that intuitive writing, their inner writer needs to be built up, their confidence, their ownership of what's going on. Otherwise, they are just going to freeze when they're like, oh, I have to remember what goes next. And let's do a little sidebar here about robotic writing, because absolutely you would use a frame for how to build that essay. And then how is it, though, that we're going to get that essay to sound like that student's writing? And how can you help this? That's why I use the HIT introduction mainly because of the H part, the hook. And we've practiced hook because it's the number 2 skill that they learn in workshops. So they've already done hooks over and over and over again. So they have this really unique way to come up with a sentence that will draw their reader in and make them kind of intrigued but not confused. And you have to practice that over and over again. That's not something that you can just bring up and have them suddenly know how to do. And then that next sentence is the introduce your topic sentence, which actually they've been practicing in those quick writes. So one of the options for quick writes every day is to write this like a reporter. No opinions, you're just stating exactly what's happening in there. And then you can draw on that first skill in the warm up of writing complex and compound sentences and have them rewrite some of those. So they get practicing, how to do an informative sentence in several different ways. Now, to level up their writing in the rest of the essay, here are a couple of ideas. One is that you have the framework, but all year long, you want to encourage them to I sometimes I say with my middle schoolers to riff. So I will put a little comment in there and say wild card sentence and put a little arrow. So like after they've given their next thesis statement, before they go into a direct quote, riff right here. It has to meet the tone of the essay, but I want them to write in their own words what they think is the truth in all of this. And even if it doesn't match up in tone, that's okay. Get them used to adding in there their own editorial comment, unless it's an informative paper. That's a little different. But even then, they can write their own sentence in there. I mean, I worked for a newspaper actually once a long, long time ago, and it was really interesting to see how the reporter can put in some creative sentences in there that are still factually correct. But let's just think of it like if we're just doing an argumentative paper, add in a wild card sentence where you riff. And then you could also have them do that in their conclusion. And then when they do that, you want to highlight that and say, oh, look at this. This is amazing. Okay, look what so-and-so did. They added in here their wild card sentence and they talked about blah, blah, blah. What do you think? This is great. And you just want to call people out, really highlight when they are taking action that you have not directed. Anytime you see that, say it out loud or say it quietly, but loud enough so a few other people can hear, because it's cool and you got to be a cat, not be a puppy in middle school, right? So you can ask for more in their writing. And then as they get comfortable with it and they see that you are looking for that, they will start to slowly rise up to that expectation. But it's a little too much to expect it right off the bat. You want to kind of build up to this at the end. And sometimes you want to hold off in your rubric. Don't tell them everything that you're grading them on. And then in that revision process, add some stuff in. Then reveal in the rubric. Okay, now I want you to go in and add a piece of figurative language. Or I want you to go in, write a complex sentence. Or I want you to go in and add your own riff in here. Maybe require it by the end of the year. And this leveling up idea came from some other teachers. So I always want to make sure I call out whenever I get an idea from someone else. I want to let you know who that was. So you can go back and trace back who it is and find them online and all that. And we can share all the great information that we're finding out there. Now, these two bits of ideas, they came from my son's teachers. And one was from high school and one was from this last year at college. So his high school English teacher, and the same concept, but they just use different words. And you could do this too. The English teacher had an additional line in the rubric that was called sophistication. And you could earn up to an extra however many points. I don't remember. But if there was basically something in there that you had done above and beyond what was asked in the framework of it. If you riffed, if you took it a step further, you get sophistication points. And so it was kind of random, like whatever the teacher sort of felt, was interesting to him, he would add in these points. My son, whenever he would write an essay for him, he would go back and be like, okay, I got to rework on this because I got to get those sophistication points. Like that was super important to him he didn't really even care what the final score was. He just wanted to get on that sophistication board. So then fast forward, he goes off to college. He's getting a degree in English, world literature. And there's so many essays to write, but this teacher, she didn't use the word sophistication. She called them joy points. And it was very subjective. And it was very like, if there's just something in your essay that is so intriguing that it brings a little hint of joy to me, you get an extra point. It was the same thing, but I loved it. And I'd always ask him, I'm like, how was your essay? Did you get your joy points? So sophistication or joy points, thank you to those teachers. It's such an awesome idea. And with that, I'll say go out there and help your students turn into the Steph Currys of the writing world. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Be sure to follow Beyond the Paragraph wherever you get your podcast and share this with a teacher bestie. They will love you for it, and so will I. To go deeper and learn more about the structured writing method, go to structuredwritingteacher.com.